Today on car traction, I am in front of the camera, which means you can see me now. This is a rarity and I haven't done a video like this for a very long time, as most of this year it has been going to classic car shows and all sorts of racing events, hill climbs, lots of wonderful places we've been this year. But we've come to the end of the 2022 season of shows, which means we sort of take a step back and talk about some spanners. Now, it has been so long that I've been last done a video of this type where I sort of like talk about some junk and make it slightly better, which means that some viewers may have joined the channel and started watching during when I'd uploaded these previous videos, which means you may not know what I look like, so here you go. But anyway, let's go on to the subject of today's video. So we've got some 4 Jaguar spanners here that look pretty bad. I hope you can see that there. All you really need to see is the colour, and today I'll be showing you how to make these old rusty spanners look a bit like this tripe spanner which I've just prepared. So what I've done is, and I will go into more depth, basically wire brush, which I've got in this deceptive first aid case. So got some wire brushes and all sorts of things. I've put them in this old box just because I don't like the look of all these modern things. So it's a bit deceptive in that there's nothing to do with aiding someone or being first in there, but there are wire brushes and all sorts of useful things to have. They do help a lot when it comes to this sort of thing. So I'll just nip behind the camera now just to show you some of these spanners a bit closer. So yeah, I'll be going already, but hopefully I'll be back in front of the camera. Just take a closer look and eventually I will show you how to make your spanners from this to this. Alright, so here are the spanners. We've got some very nice Jaguar spanners that are looking a bit sorry for themselves at the moment, but they will look a lot better now. Originally those would have been painted black in a lovely set like this Triumph spanner here that I've just done. You can see how you'd think that that's been like that for 50 years, 60 years. I mean, this is probably a 60s spanner. I'd say those are 50s. This could be older, could be new, I don't really know. It's probably a motorbike spanner, but then again could be Triumph cars. But you can see how it's got that sort of faded through look a bit. Hopefully the camera will focus a bit. Well, it's not like perfect matte black. We got some like the top of the lettering starting to show through, and it just looks all quite old, as if it's been like that for a very, very long time. But in fact, I've only done this about 10 minutes ago or so, and that's how quick it dries actually. But we'd see the difference between this Jaguar spanner here, if the camera will focus. Probably not, oh well, but it's really easy to tell the difference between those two. So let's get into making your spanners from that into that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to go into the first aid case, and I think I'll use my metal wire brush, as that one seems to work quite well. Just a simple little wire brush, and it's really easy, but I'm just going to go up and down the length of the spanner like so, just sort of removing if there's any old paint or any old surface rust or anything like that. Noisy car. Anyway, just removing any little bits of rust that will just show up once I've painted it. Now we will be spraying paint in this video, so I do suggest wearing an ill-fitting jumper like I am, or something that you're not too bothered about, because there is a chance that I've already got some on my hands, but there's a chance that you could get some on your sleeve or something. But to be honest, as long as you're not going everywhere, then it's really quite easy. It's simple and you can't really mess it up. Just a little piece of cardboard I'd recommend, just to stop it getting all over your table and all sorts of bad things happening then. And then you're also going to want some WD-40 for when it's dry, but we will get onto that later. Just make sure you do the sides as well, just getting off any little bits of rust. And the inside of the jaws as well. You also need to remember that those need painting as well, because it does look a bit silly if you've just got the bit that you see, most of the top flat part, all black, and then you've got some really horrible orangey rust there. So you do want to sort of make sure you do it properly when you're spraying it. I'd say that's pretty much ready to go now. So I think I'll just use the slightly finer bit now, just to get little bits of rust out here, just sort of cleaning it up to make sure the paint looks nice and even on it. Just really, really simple little things that you need to do to prepare your spanners for this. And just blow off all the sort of excess rust, I guess, that's come off from my wire brush. Just put it back in there. Very useful things to have. So I think this is now ready for paint. So for this next bit, you're obviously going to want some black paint. Now I've got this gloss paint. It won't look glossy, believe me, once I've finished with it. WD-40 of course, and you're going to want a rag, because if you spray the paint just straight, tops come off. As I was saying, if you... That's not gone well. I'll just wipe that on the rag. Right, as I was saying, if you just spray the paint, I'll just do it on the cardboard, you see it ends up getting really, really heavy, and that's not what you want, because you want this sort of slightly showing through style. I should wipe that off. Don't want to get my sleeves on that. So what I'd recommend doing is perhaps spraying it on a rag, making sure to have just like your finger, so you can really feel what you're doing, and you just sort of rub along, and you can see how the spanner is slowly getting darker with the little bit of paint that I'm putting on. And this really is one of the best methods that I've found to make your spanner look really, really nice, because they do look good black. I've done this with one of my petrol cans before, and it does make it look a lot better, but the main thing is just make sure you're not putting too much paint on. As you can see with my bit of paint, just really quick. You can go straight onto the spanner if you want, but you have to be sort of like really sort of little squeeze on there like that. Nothing heavy. And also you might want to be sort of far away from it to make sure it doesn't get too heavy on it. And then you just sort of rub it around to stop it from getting too thick. As you can see, you've got all these little nooks and crannies here where the paint's not quite getting. We'll sort that out after. Sometimes you can, just like I said, keeping the paint far away, just sort of spray in that area. You can see it's got it all over it now, but of course I'm not going to leave it like that, and I will just rub it along, keep putting that in the way, and you can see that that little bit of sort of orangey rust has gone there now, which is good. It's just about making sure you do it slowly. You see, like the little Jaguar thing, the actual little logo, you can see how it's not quite fully covered, so basically I'll stay quite far back with my paint, just do a couple of little squirts on there, and then I'll just move that around, dabbing it to make sure it gets into the little crevice of the Jaguar logo. And I'll have to do the same for this little measurement here. Yeah, it's really quite a therapeutic thing to do, so I'd say this side's just about starting to be finished. You see that, if I left it, that would really show, but you just sort of rub it around so it doesn't end up getting too thick. I will get onto like the little jaw bits and on the side, but that's for after that really is. But already, how much nicer does that look if you can compare it to the other side? That versus that, I think that looks a lot nicer. So now I'll do this other side, but I'll give you a much closer in view so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got the other side of my spanner up, and I think once again I'll just spray paint onto the rag just a little bit there, and exactly the same as before, just really rub it around, just concentrate on getting it all over the spanner. Like I said, you have got the little Jag logo there, or you can use it with your finger, or you can just, as I said, really quick dabs like that, and just make sure you move it around, and I will like make that better later on, but I just prefer to get the sort of big bit done first. How nice does that look already? Just a little spray again. Just trying to stop the cardboard from getting too wet really. See, there's just a tiny little bit of rust there, so I'll stay really far back for this one. Just get an idea of where I am. It's got a few specks around it, and just sort of rub it around there. There you go, that's done that side of it quite well. Do this end now. So I put quite a bit on there, so I'll have to wipe it around all over the length of the spanner. Once again, using a thin bit of cloth so I can feel my way around. Once again we got the little logo, that's just because it's indented, is that the word, where it's like further in, the paint just isn't quite getting there, so once again staying far back, just spray around there. Now once again just rub it around, dab it into there a bit more just to get it down, and there you go, that looks pretty good I think. And there you go. So now, but hopefully you can see there how there's a little bit of orange rust on the sides of the spanner, which of course is not looking good. See, it's already dried already, that side, but what I do for this is I reckon you just hold it up, make sure you don't spray onto your sleeve, but just sort of, same thing, just tiny little sort of blips, I guess you could say, and just sort of, once again, thin piece of cloth, and just really get it round in those little gaps to make sure that camera's probably not focusing on that, but trust me, it is getting into these little gaps quite well. Remember to do the outside one as well. That's alright, I'll just do a quick bit on the other side now. And there you go, you can see that's all gone quite well. We've got a little bit of excess, so I'll just wipe that in with the rest. In fact, that bit might need a bit more paint actually. Sort of doing it in very thin layers so that you do see some of the bare metal starting to come through. Now on the side of these spanners are actually very, very thin, so I probably don't need to worry about those, as on the Triumph spanner it's got quite a thick side, as you can see, so I did have to paint that separately. But with this one, the Jag spans, they sort of curve around quite a bit, so you don't really need to bother about that unless it's really obvious, but I'm not having that problem, so you probably won't if you do this. Same thing again, just little bits of paint on there, just about making sure it doesn't dry if you put a bit too much on. That's what the rag's for, moving it around and making sure it doesn't get too heavy. Let's do the outside of this one again. And I think that spanner's looking pretty good like that, so I'll just leave it for a minute or so. It's probably dry already, but considering that I'm going to be putting penetrating oil or WD-40 on it, it's worth letting it dry just for a minute or so. But that I think is pretty much done, so I'll wait for a minute and then I'll be able to put this WD-40 on. That stops it from rusting, stops it from getting into the condition of these other spanners. You can see the contrast there, really, really dramatic, and it just richens the colours up, which makes it look quite a bit nicer. So next thing up now, I've just let that dry off for a minute or so. I've got my WD-40, probably can't see it there, but basically just spray on the WD-40. It doesn't matter how much you put on really, but obviously you want to get your money's worth out of a can of it, so don't sort of go mad with it. But you can see it just sort of richens up the colours that little bit more, and also while there might be that huge a difference with the spanner that I've just painted, it helps preserve it as well, which is really, really good if it's sitting in a shed like mine for sort of years on end. It will help it to sort of stay in this condition, and you do need to do it like a few times, like maybe once every year. I go through all like my spanners and things and just oil rag them all in this way just to stop them from deteriorating too much, and it does really, really help preserving these spanners, and especially with like old tins and things, it does richen up the colours. But just a word of advice, don't do it with shell tins, because spraying WD-40 on shell tins strips the writing off. So just saying any other tins, but not shell tins, because that does strip the writing off. But these Jaguar spanners, doesn't that look absolutely lovely like that? That's just, look, the colours look so much better like that. Now I've just got another 3 to do in exactly the same way. Moving on to the second spanner now. This is the same size as the first one. I'm going to get my wire brush out again and do exactly the same thing all over again. So the second one is now ready for the paint, so I'll just put my brush out of the way. Let's keep organised. I've got my paint here. It's probably already shaken up, that's alright. Exactly the same thing again. Here's my rag. Just little tiny little bits of paint and just rub them around. That's all it is. It really is that simple. Now actually I want to give a shout out to all the people at my school, because in the last sort of half a year or so, literally everyone in my year at school, like everyone in year 10, they all know car traction. So if anyone's watching this from my school, hello, and this is the sort of junk that I get up to during my free time. But yeah, lots of people seem to take quite an interest in it, which is quite funny, because none of them have an interest in cars. They probably watch like 3 seconds of 2 videos or something like that, but it is quite funny when you hear people talking about car traction like that. If you've got any friends and you think they'd like this, then please spread the car traction message. It will help to get to the 1,000 subscribers. With your help, your subscribing, we can get there. Will be very, very good. But yeah, expect more memorabilia videos such as this time of year, because not as many shows on, so I have to find other boring things to do with my time, such as cleaning up and painting old spanners. Now the good thing about cleaning up old spanners like this is, if you try to paint them any other way, such as brush painting or something, old spanners have lots of like little markings like the Jaguar logo in these, and like the little measurements you get at each corner of the spanner. So those can become sort of quite faded, and if you brush paint them, you'll just lose all that detail, and the paint will sort of get all stuck up in the little sort of indents in the metal, and it will just look terrible. So the good thing about this is that the paint that you get in any sort of normal spray can is really, really thin, which means it sort of sets into the gaps of the lettering, which is really, really useful when you're trying to preserve a tool like this, because it does look good once done, as I'm sure you agree. That Jaguar spanner just over there, it does look very, very nice like that, and hopefully the 2 remaining ones and this one will look just as good. So now I've finished painting the second 3/4 inch size one, so I'll just spray a little bit of WD-40 over that. And just rub that in exactly as before. Once again, just to preserve it really, that's the main thing. You can see the difference between those. Oh, it's paint. Alright, never mind, I'll have to wait another minute for that to dry up before I can put the WD-40 on, because I don't want to put it on wet. That was a bit dumb of me. It's probably dry and it was only a tiny little bit. You don't get paint and WD-40 mixed up. Don't put paint on your nice old oil tins. I reckon those 2 are looking pretty nice as they are, so just 2 more to go now. Right, so these last 2 are some of the most rough ones. I don't think my wire brush will ever be the same again, because these ones got quite a bit of rust on and all sorts of stuff, so this will take quite a bit of going at. Right, so that is all these spanners done, all 4. Some of these little ones were a bit harder to do because the text was just so small, and it just sort of like eroded and rusted away a bit too much, but I think they have come out looking very good nonetheless. That one's probably quite the best. They do look really, really nice. I know you can't see that, so I'll put a piece of B-roll over the top. That one's probably my favourite. They do look very nice. And that's it for this video. If you want to see some of the car shows and racing events that we go to, then have a look at the channel homepage for previous videos, for like BSCC Prescott, Ultimate Park Gold Cup. We did all sorts this year, so if that's more your thing, then please check out those videos. But if automobilia is your thing, then I hope there'll be more coming, as it's the time of year, November, December, January, February, where I do a lot of this sort of thing. As I said, not many car shows on now, so I will be doing more videos like this very, very soon. And that's all. Please subscribe if you liked it. Drop a comment below any different ideas for videos that will be considered. And that's all. Now the only thing I have to worry about is finding a place to put all these lovely Jaguar spanners. Thanks for watching.